25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Gosh, this is an interesting book I'm looking at right here. It's called Both Sides of the Line. It's written by our guest, Kevin Kelly, who's on the phone. And gosh, if you've ever known anybody who was very, very positive and definitely made a difference in your lives, and then you find out there was this whole dark side to that person, you were probably going to be amazed at this story. I can't think of anybody I know who was such a contrast to a secret hidden life. Although you never know the people you know. Kevin Kelly is an assistant dean of students at the prestigious Deerfield Academy in Deerfield, Massachusetts. And the book is called Both Sides of the Line. My coach, the Boston mob enforcer, my mentor, the murderer, the true story of Clyde Dempsey and the 1974 Don Bosco Bears. It is a memoir. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Larry. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, my gosh. This is such an interesting story. Were you heartbroken when you found out the truth about your coach?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he had made such a difference in our lives as he was trying to, not only put us on a path to be athletes, but also putting us on a path on how to live a good life. And it was an avenue most of us were seeking, coming from the inner city, and most of us came from broken homes. So yeah, it was a shock.
Wow, I know I jumped ahead probably 10 questions by going straight for that one, but so we'll back up and we'll get to the beginning a little bit. But there's a story today about the trial of is it McQueary? Is that the guy's name? Mike
Yes.
McQueary up in Penn State. Mm-hmm. He's the whole Jerry Sandusky, Joe Paterno story.
Right.
I mean, that was one of those too, where you felt like, oh my gosh. Except in their case, I don't know. Theirs is more unforgivable. Jerry Sandusky is more unforgivable. Your guy is kind of unforgivable too, but I don't know. It's easier to forgive somebody who's a murderer than it is somebody who's a child molester. I don't know why.
Well, yeah, that's a real good point. I think we look at sex offenders as predators on these innocent, children, which puts us all in a state of mind. Whereas a murder, there's usually a cause and effect. The reality is that indeed, Dempsey's murder does devastate a family, and if you read the letter from this boy's mother to the jury, it sobers you up pretty quick.
Yeah, really. So take us back in time. Your first relationship with Mr. Dempsey. Did you call him Mr. Dempsey, Coach Dempsey? What did you call him?
Yeah, I just called him Coach. I call him Coach. The first time I ever hear of Dempsey, when my older brother played at Don Bosco, which was an all-boys Catholic school in downtown Boston. We were perennial losers in the Catholic Conference, which was one of the most competitive and talented leagues in the state. We had no football field. We had no practice field. We had no gym. We were located right outside the combat zone, which was the red light district of the city of Boston. So we were a unique school. We were a trade school that was located in downtown Boston. Dempsey, I had heard about through my older brother, where Dempsey was a collector for the mob. He was a notorious street fighter, and at that time he wasn't connected to Don Bosco. There was a big story out that he fought this guy and bit his ear off, and that spread through the school about this guy being just in his own league in the sense of being a street fighter. And then going into my junior year, Dempsey would come into Bosco, and I remember him being introduced to the team where I sat up as if, someone put an electric shock through me, saying, wow, this is the guy that, my brother Tom had told me about. But he was very soft-spoken. He was physically 5'7", 210, massive, but very unassuming. He looked rather dumpy, and he had the big, thick Coke bottle glasses. And so when you met him, he had charisma. He preached God, family, and country. He demanded his kids be drug-free. So all of the rumor piece of him about being a collector for the mob and being a street fighter, none of that was coming through him as he was our coach.
So at that point, in order for you to write the book, though, you had to go back in time to even before you really knew him?
Well, what I did was my research was based on kids that grew up with him, kids that he went to high school with. He was a two-time All-American in Boston English when Boston English was nationally ranked. He went to Bridgeton Academy for a PG, a postgraduate year. I went to Xavier, played Park League, semi-pro football, and I interviewed everyone through that. avenue. And then I interviewed Boston Police, State Police, the detectives who finally, got Dempsey out of Canada. So there was a wide spectrum of people who knew Dempsey on many, many different levels, including my teammates who would view him as a man that was a surrogate father, physically put kids in a vehicle and drove them to colleges. He was never married. He never had kids, and he was committed to his boys that they were going to have the life that he didn't have.
Oh, wow. So do you understand, or do you help us understand, or both, how the double life part of this came to be? Was it money? Did he need the money? Is that why he was doing that?
Well, it's a great question. I think none of us get to where we are as adults by mistake, right? Dempsey was, as he describes himself, he goes, I was the fat little kid that was forced to take violin lessons, and I wore the thick glasses, and I got picked on when I was a kid. And one day his father walked into his bedroom while Dempsey was crying because he just got beaten up again for the, nth time. And his dad had a violin in one hand and a pair of boxing gloves in the other. And he said, if you want to play the violin, fine, but we're not going to let the violin, cause this, you crying on the bed. Mm-hmm. And he teaches his boy how to fight, and Dempsey discovers that he has this ferocious temper. And he turns into this machine. And he gets a reputation where he just wasn't worth messing with because he had this Tasmanian devil switch in him. And when he goes to high school, he really does turn it up a notch, and he gets this reputation. Later on, when he gets recruited to work for the mob, I think he finds love and respect in that world, and he finds love and respect in the world of football.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And that's really, really what it boils down to for the importance of a person's self-worth. I mean, you throw yourself into different situations, and if you find one situation that makes you feel like you are a worthwhile person, you go with that aspect of it.
Absolutely. I think when he discovered how I don't want to say, I don't know if he looked in the mirror and said, boy, I'm dangerous. I think he probably looked into the mirror and said, I get a tremendous amount of street credit.
Yeah? Did we lose you? Uh-oh. Are you there? I don't hear anybody, Robin.
No, the light's still on.
Kevin Kelly is our guest. I hope he's still there. Kevin?
There he is. Kids that he coached.
Okay.
Okay.
You went blank for a little bit there. Some kind of
street credit.
Phone glitch. What I'm not clear about, though, is he started boxing at his father's suggestion. It was a good suggestion, it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
And he becomes a coach at the school. Was the coach a paying position? Must have paid, right? Must have been a job.
Well, the Catholic Conference, that he would have received somewhere about $1,500 for the season. I mean, he wasn't coaching because because of the money. He was coaching because he just loved the game. He loved the fact that the game mirrored the lessons that you learn in life, and that he was that type of coach that demanded that his kids play with integrity, and that he wanted his kids to be tough. He wanted his kids to respect the game and be aware of the fact that the lessons that you learn on the football field were going to mirror the lessons that you learned in life. He was constantly preaching to us how to live our lives. And for me and for my teammates, that's what I was looking for at the age of 15. I was looking for, I wanted to be a football player, but what Dempsey gave me was a roadmap to adulthood.
So when we picture the mafia, unless we've been in the mafia, we picture movies. And in the mafia movies, the mafioso guy is always the best guy in the world to his family, and the nightmare to pretty much anybody else. So that's what it sounds like Dempsey was. He was a great guy to his family, which was the kids and the football team.
Yeah, I can't imagine Dempsey coming to you. Looking for money. I confront him one night, 2 years after I graduated from high school. I play a year of college and I play a year of semi-pro, and I actually play with him. We were teammates, and we won a championship together as teammates, which was really a special moment for me personally. But that one night before I go back to college, I actually confront him, and I was nervous to confront him My dad was a Boston cop, and I knew a lot about Dempsey from my dad. And I asked him straight out if he works for the mob. And I say to him, you preach God, family, and country. You wanted your kids to be drug-free. And I bit. And I said, I need to ask you a question. And he says, yeah, what is it? And I said, do you work for the mob? And Dempsey said, without even blinking, he said, yeah, I work for the mob. He said, these are people who are borrowing money to do something illegal. They don't pay it back. It's not like in the movies. He goes, when I come and see you for the first or second time, I don't beat you up. I don't, threaten you. I sit there and say, hey, you got to make payments back to the mob, and you're going to tell me how you're going to do it. And then if I come to see you 3 or 4 times and you don't pay, things are going to get rough. And they know this going in. I mean, I think what Dempsey had was he had this incredible charisma, and he believed every word that came out of his mouth, whether it was coaching or whether he was working for the mob. And I think that's what made him so dynamic in many ways.
If that happened, if he was here today doing that, would he have been diagnosed with bipolar, or is this just his personality?
Well, again, a great question. People who grew up with Dempsey, special education didn't come in until 1972. Dempsey graduated from high school in '64. There's no doubt in my mind that if he would have been, he would have had a full evaluation when he was a kid in high school. He got in a lot of trouble in high school. The term bipolar is really a tough diagnosis, but the personality of him living in two worlds, no doubt that he would fit some type of profile. He would certainly have a personality disorder. How does somebody navigate from doing so much good for so many, and then turn around to have the capacity to flick that switch to take someone else's life is really an interesting conversation.
Our guest is Kevin Kelly. His book is called Both Sides of the Line: My Coach, the Boston Mob Enforcer, My Mentor, the Murderer, the True Story of Clyde Dempsey and the 1974 Don Bosco Bears. It's a memoir, and we'll continue with our conversation on the other side of the break. We'll take that break right now and be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala. We'll be right back.
Gene Powell Pasture Mowing. Our tractor services include bush hog, disking, front end loader, box blade, and stump grinding. We also have zero-turn mowers for the smaller paddocks, aisleways, fence rows, and lawn care. Fence row spraying is also available for weed control. We are licensed and insured. Gene Powell Pasture Mowing, 352-629-2440, or online at powellgene, Gene, at yahoo.com. Gene Powell Pasture Mowing.
Attention passengers for Flight 1370. The plane has been delayed at its departure point and will be at least 2 hours late. We apologize for any inconvenience.
Are you serious? It took us over an hour to get here, 2 hours going through security and getting our tickets, and now we have to wait another 2 hours.
Yeah, it's beautiful here, but we're inside this overcrowded airport all day because the plane is stuck in bad weather.
This is the last time we ever do this. When we get back, we're going to Ocala Aviation and getting our pilot's license.
Yeah, we've been talking about that long enough. It's about time we did it. Then we could just fly ourselves and never have to deal with this mess again.
Right. No long lines, no full body groping security, no baggage checks.
Not to mention never losing your luggage. Remind me again why we haven't done that?
Well, we're idiots.
Oh, right.
Attention all passengers for Flight 1370. It looks like the plane is going to be delayed a little bit longer. The airline has lost the pilot's luggage. Isn't it time you got your pilot's license? Call Ocala Aviation today. 352-861-7484. That's 352-861-7484. Hey, you've earned it. Call today.
Get it for less at the DIY Home Center outlet. Get top quality real wood cabinets the same or less than the big box stores are selling the cheap stuff. And that's not all. Drywall screws big box stores are $6.47 a pound. At DIY, only $4.99. Plus, DIY has the largest selection of mobile home parts and accessories anywhere. From carpet to doors, get the DIY supplies you need for less. The DIY Home Center outlet. We are your building material closeout store. 2191 Northwest 10th Street, just 2 miles east of I-75.
Hey, this is Matt Wilkerson from Verizon. You work all day, right? So why would you want to spend your night out shopping for that new phone? Well, Marion County, let me and Verizon help you out. I can deliver to your home or office, saving you precious time. Phone, tablets, internet, home phones, even accessories. Whatever you need, we will deliver free of charge. Call me at the store, 352-528-0020. That's 528-0020.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
Workplace romances are more likely to end in marriage than relationships that start in any other way, even meeting through friends. people trying to lose weight don't have to ban pasta from their diets. The real problem is that people use pasta as, quote, a vehicle for overly salty, fatty sauces. Ladies, if you're trying to make a good impression on a man, listen up. Don't worry about small flaws in your appearance. He won't notice.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
All right, 10 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Kevin Kelly is on the phone up in Boston. I don't even think I asked him if he's up there. But the book takes place in Boston. Both Sides of the Line is the title of the book. Kevin, are you in Boston right now?
I'm actually in Deerfield, which is about 2 hours west.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Deerfield, that would make sense. Okay. So Clyde Dempsey is passed away, right?
Yes, he passed away in 2001. Yeah.
Okay. Now the murder that is referred to in the press material that we have, that happened 35 years ago. It says. What I'm not clear about was the person he killed somebody he killed in a bar fight, or was it because he owed money to the mob? What was the story there?
Yeah, it's more of a bar fight situation. I graduated from Bosco in 1975, and in somewhere around 1979, Dempsey's use of cocaine will increase, and his frequency of carrying a gun also increased as well. And if anyone who was walking the streets didn't need a gun, it was Dempsey. And this issue that takes place in this nightclub in Boston between him and this young man, Edward White, will accelerate from 0 to 100 really quick. I mean, there wasn't all the witnesses that were there that night. There was a few words between the two of them, but there is a strange and a bizarre moment between the two of them where Dempsey will pull out a gun. They'll have a few words that went back and forth, and Dempsey actually fires a bullet into the floor. And the response from this kid, young man, was fascinating because how many of us have had a gun fired at them?
Yeah.
And the noise of a gun, the actual to be that close to a bullet. I mean, your instinct would be to run away, but he doesn't, and he actually mocks Dempsey, and that's what makes Dempsey, fire 3 shots into the young man's chest, and and kills the young man in front of all these people. Dempsey will leave the bar. He'll go to a friend's house for a couple of days. He'll work his way up to Canada. He'll steal the identification of a baby out of a cemetery so that he can reinvent himself. It allows him to get a driver's license, which allows him to get a job, to be employed, and all under the alias of Ronald Mayor. He'll meet Sarah Vaughn. They'll fall in love. He'll be engaged to be married, and it all comes to an end when he's the featured criminal 9 years later on America's Most Wanted, and that's how Dempsey comes back to Boston.
Wow. Okay. Oh, wow. My goodness. So it sounds like I'm just trying to read your voice a little bit. It sounds like you never lost respect for him in spite of all of that part of his life. It sounds like you still respect and in fact love him.
I would say that as a dad, and I would say as an educator, that Dempsey gave me a roadmap, and many of us gave me a roadmap to how to lead my life. And for that segment of his life, as you're talking about the bipolar piece of him, or the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the Coach Dempsey, the goodness of Dempsey, yes, I've taken that with me. The criminal Dempsey, if the Coach Dempsey could speak to the criminal Dempsey, I look at that the way I think Coach would look at that and say, look, you owe something to society. You devastated a family. You took the life of a young man who never had a chance to maximize his dreams, and that Dempsey needs to pay a price. And that price that he pays it to society. So I think that Dempsey could put himself in 2 different boxes, and so don't I put the criminal Dempsey in a box that, although it broke my heart, and although there was a decade of kids who never had the opportunity to meet him, to be taught by him, to be inspired by him, I'm at peace with the fact that he ended up in prison.
Did he have any children under his alias?
My understanding that he had no children at all, and then at the end of his life, my understanding is through interviews is that he regretted. There was tremendous regret for making that decision of taking someone else's life. If I could, I would just share just one story in the book that I think represents just how complex this guy is. Dempsey gets brought up to gets brought down to Boston from Canada, and he incites a riot at the Nashua Street Jail, which was a holding facility that he was at after his trial. He gets sentenced for life. He's going to go down to Walpole, which is a maximum security prison, and he incites a riot at the jail, and they put him in solitary confinement. And it turns out that one of the guards is the head coach at Don Bosco at that time. And he puts on a football jacket and he goes into the cell. His supervisor is saying, "You can't go in there. Dempsey's going to kill you." And he says, No, I think I can reach him. And he opens the door and he's wearing the Don Bosco football jacket. And he says, "Coach Dempsey." And Dempsey said, "Who wants to know?" And he said, "My name is Bob McIntosh. I'm the head coach at Don Bosco." And Bob said, when he turned and looked at me, he goes, "I felt like I was looking into the eyes of Satan." Oh. And then when Dempsey looked at the football jacket and saw the Don Bosco, he came right out of it, and for the next 5 hours, they sit down in that jail cell. And think about this. Here's a guy who incited a riot, and they talk about kids. They talk about the purity of the game. He's showing technique. And Bob McIntosh said, "I learned more from Dempsey in that 5 hours than I did in 30 years of coaching." He says, "But it was the closing statement that has never left me." And here he is, 5 hours later. He's going to lock Dempsey back into solitary confinement. And think of the mindset of Dempsey, where he turns around and he looks at McIntosh and he says, "Remember, the secret to great coaching, you got to love your kids." And McIntosh said that statement has haunted him for the rest of his life. He said, how does anyone have the capacity to be knowing full well that he's going to kiss his life away and go to prison for life, but at the same time wants to make sure that this guy has the golden nugget to what it means to be a great coach?
Yeah.
Wow,
I guess
gave me chills.
I know, me too. I think the only way to understand that maybe is as a father. You would never do certain things to your children or say things around them or show a side of you around them that you might show the rest of the world. I think sometimes we shield the ones we love because we love them, and the best of us comes out around them. And maybe that's what this story is about. Maybe this is all of our story, except none of us, well, not all of us, have gone to the extreme of killing somebody.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think all of us have a gray area in our lives. No one is that linear and that perfect, right? You know, we project who we want to be often, you know, right? And if you do coach and if you do teach, I mean, you know, if you're working with kids, you project an awful lot of who you think you are or who you want to be. But Dempsey is in the extreme world of that.
The one aspect of this book, and the book is so much more complex than we're able to cover in a little interview, but the one thing I wanted to ask you about is the idea of encouraging the underdog. That part always gets to me. He wasn't just there to tell the star player, let's go get him, but he was also there to tell the worst player on the team, you know, you're important too. That means a lot.
Yeah.
When I went back, it took me 14 years to find all of us. Our school closed in 1998. We had a horrible alumni association. Some of these guys I hadn't seen in close to 4 decades. And when I interviewed them individually, I said, you know, Dempsey was an assistant coach, and he was the line coach, and he was a defensive coach. Bob Currier was the head coach, who was legendary there for over 30 years. And when I asked them to compare Dempsey to any other coach that they had at the high school or college level, semi-pro level, I said, what makes him stand out? And every single player said, I knew he cared for me. And I don't think, I think great coaches are never looking for the title. I think it's something that's in their DNA. They just have this special thing where a kid who's a third string offensive guard, who on most teams is ignored or gets the feeling that they're not good or they're not a respected member of the team. Dempsey had these small ways of making you feel special because you were in his game. You know, you came out for the team to play my game, to play football, and because of that, I love you. For that, I care for you. For that, I'm going to go an extra mile for you.
Kevin, we are up against the clock. Thank you so much.
Sure.
This is a great interview. The book is called Both Sides of the Line. Kevin Kelly. I'm guessing it's on Amazon and all the other booksellers. We'll make sure we put a link on the when we put this interview online. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for what you're doing.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. So far, so good. A top military commander says a wide-scale operation launched today to retake the Iraqi city of Mosul from ISIS is going well. There's more Iraqi